the perfect subtraction. The message arrived encrypted on a burner phone April Woods hadn't used in 2 years. Contact: Detective Hollis, Internal Security Division. Location: the Finch Institute, high-altitude research complex near the Idaho border. The message was terse, bypassing the usual government boilerplate. Anomaly: not a body, not a theft. The geometry is missing. April, perched precariously on the edge of journalistic obsolescence, recognized the unique scent of panic in Hollis's tone. She flew immediately. The Finch Institute was a fortress dedicated to theoretical physics and exotic structural integrity, built by the paranoid, brilliant Dr. Alastair Finch. When she arrived, the air was cold and tight, thick with the silent activity of federal agents who looked less like investigators and more like men terrified of breaking a highly fragile sheet of glass. Hollis met her in the sterilized outer foyer, his face drawn. "April, I warned you about coming back to this kind of work. You called me, Hollis. And geometry doesn't just go missing. Tell me what I'm looking at." Hollis led her past layers of security, emphasizing the uniqueness of the scene. Finch, a pioneer in non-Euclidean architecture, had vanished 72 hours ago. His laboratory, known as the White Room due to its seamless, optically perfect interior, was where the incident occurred. "We've done thermal scans, seismic imaging, muon analysis. He didn't fall through the floor. He wasn't vaporized by conventional means. He was subtracted," Hollis whispered, pausing before the final security door. "He was standing in the center of the room. Now, where he was, there is a volume of space that has been perfectly removed. It's not a hole. It's a void that violates everything we know about stress and structure. Look closely, Woods. This isn't physics, it's an erasure." April prepared herself, but the reality of the White Room was instantly disorienting. The room was flawless save for the central anomaly. It was a cubic volume, approximately 2 by 2 by 2 meters, perfectly delineated by smooth, structurally sound edges. The concrete floor, the reinforced ceiling, the titanium walls, they simply ended at the boundary of the void, only to restart again on the opposite side. There were no fractures, no dust, no signs of heat stress, and crucially, no gravity differential near the edges. It was seamless. April extended a gloved hand toward the space where the cube should have been, stopping inches short. The air inside the void looked exactly like the air outside it, yet her internal equilibrium screamed that the space was fundamentally wrong. It didn't feel empty. It felt absent-dash. It was a perfect, physical definition of zero. She looked at Hollis, her skepticism finally giving way to a visceral, cold dread. "Where's the volume he occupied, Hollis? Where did the air, and the floor, and the man go?" The silence of the White Room only amplified the chilling impossibility of the geometric subtraction. Part 2. The Obsidian Tetrahedron. The investigation immediately shifted from missing person to unprecedented event. The sheer impossible structural integrity of the void meant that whatever forces removed the space had acted with surgical, mathematical precision. April spent hours cataloging the anomalies, focusing her journalistic eye on the details the physicists and FBI agents were too busy scanning to notice. She noted a strange shimmer when directed high-frequency light hit the boundaries of the void, almost as if the air itself was folding over a sharp, invisible edge. Finch's notes were already being collected, box after box of esoteric calculations involving torsion fields, non-Euclidean geometry applied to architecture, and the terrifying concept of volume conservation violation. Finch, it seemed, wasn't just observing the impossible. He was trying to engineer it. The remaining equipment in the White Room was standard high-end physics gear, save for one item located a few meters away from the subtracted volume. It was a crystalline structure, perfectly cut, about the size of a human head. The material was pure, seamless obsidian, machined into a flawless tetrahedron. April approached it cautiously. The air around the obsidian felt unnaturally cold, absorbing ambient heat like a localized vacuum. When she picked it up, ignoring Hollis's frantic protests, it felt heavy, disproportionately so for its size, and resonated faintly with a silent, low-frequency hum that vibrated only in her bones. "This wasn't here when we first secured the scene, April," Hollis warned, his voice tight. "It appeared sometime between the first and second search grids." "It didn't appear, Hollis. It was likely ejected when the subtraction stabilized," April countered, turning the stone over. She found intricate, microscopic carvings along its edges, symbols that resembled mathematical notation mixed with ancient protective sigils. She recognized one set of symbols from Finch's scattered notes, the signature equation for compression equilibrium. The tetrahedron wasn't just a paperweight. It was likely the catalyst or the focusing lens for the entire catastrophic event. As she held the obsidian, she felt a brief but piercing sense of vertigo, as if her own internal sense of direction was being momentarily warped. She realized that Dr. Finch hadn't just accidentally disappeared. He had used the physics he engineered to create a perfect geometric prison, and the tetrahedron was the key to unlocking the mechanism. The journalistic pursuit now mixed with a chilling personal compulsion to understand the force that could erase volume and leave no trace of fracture or residue. Part 3. The Equations of Torsion. April immediately delved into Finch's digital archives, requiring 3 different federal access codes and a full day of bureaucratic maneuvering. Finch's work was housed not on conventional servers, but in a custom, air-gapped array that constantly cycled cryptographic keys. What she found confirmed the worst fears the initial scene suggested. Finch wasn't interested in 4 dimensions. He was interested in 0 dimensions, the perfect removal of volume without energy expenditure. His primary focus was torsion geometry, a complex field suggesting that space-time could be twisted back upon itself locally, effectively folding a volume into a mathematically non-existent state. The notes frequently referenced a concept he termed the perfect volume subtraction, PVS. Finch believed that if the rotational stress on the metric tensor reached a critical, precise point, the volume would simply cease to occupy 3-dimensional space, appearing as a seamless void. The digital trail led April to Miriam Vance, Finch's notoriously shy and fiercely loyal research assistant, who had been locked in protective custody since the disappearance. April found Vance pale, rocking slightly, clearly under heavy sedative, but lucid enough to harbor deep, specific terror. The symmetry it broke, Vance mumbled when April showed her images of the void and the tetrahedron. Dr. Finch believed that volume must be conserved, but he realized conservation was a choice made by the universe, not a law. He was trying to prove the universe could be mathematically efficient, that excess volume was wasteful. April pressed her on the PVS device. Vance admitted Finch had built a prototype, the torsion field generator, TFG, which was housed in a reinforced sublevel bunker beneath the White Room. He performed small tests first, removing air from sealed containers, removing microscopic dust motes. But he got ambitious. Vance's eyes darted around the room. He kept saying the perfect cube was the key. He needed a perfect geometric target to achieve perfect subtraction. Anything organic, anything asymmetrical, would cause the process to fail violently. He had to be the final, perfect geometric component. When April asked if Finch had intended to step into the field, Vance looked down. He intended to step in and step out immediately, proving that space could be momentarily stored and then restored. He called it dimensional banking. But he missed the calculation about the feedback loop. The PVS needs total, instantaneous equilibrium. If he lingered even a millisecond too long, the field would lock, compressing the volume indefinitely. April realized the horrifying truth. Finch wasn't a victim of an explosion. He was a victim of a flawless calculation. He had succeeded in proving his theory, but success meant being permanently imprisoned inside his own geometric perfect zero. Part 4. The Silent Inhalation. April needed an independent, non-official witness, someone who had interacted with Finch immediately preceding the event and was untainted by government theories of advanced weaponry or conventional suicide. She found Dale Taggart, a contracted technician who had delivered specialized calibration crystals to the White Room 6 hours before the scheduled final test. Taggart was nervous, sipping coffee in a cheap roadside diner 50 miles from the Institute, deeply unsettled by the official silence surrounding Finch's disappearance. He was buzzing, man, really high-strung. Kept talking about symmetry and how ugly and perfect lines were, Taggart recounted, wiping sweat from his brow. He was standing right where the nothing is. He told me to clear the complex by 3 a.m., no exceptions, and not to come back until the seismic alarm sounded. April showed him the images of the void. Taggart visibly flinched. Yeah, that's where he was standing. Center mass. April asked specifically about sound, energy signatures, or light. Taggart shook his head emphatically. That's the thing that keeps me awake. If something exploded or imploded or even vaporized a whole chunk of concrete, there should have been a noise, right? A boom, a crack, something. He leaned closer across the sticky table. It wasn't a loud sound, Miss Woods. It was the opposite. It was a sound I heard in my inner ear, not my outer one. Like when you're underwater and the pressure changes, but instantaneous. It sounded like the world took a single, perfect, massive inhalation. And then silence. A silence that was too heavy, too complete. April recognized the description. The silent snap, associated with extreme gravitational lensing or high-energy field stabilization. The sound Taggart described was the audible signature of geometry momentarily ceasing to exist. The volume wasn't violently expelled. It was neatly zipped out of the three-dimensional manifold. April pressed him on visual cues. I saw a flash, but it wasn't white or red. It was neutral, like the air went flat for a second, and the color vanished from everything near the center of the room. When I looked back through the monitor feed, the space was already gone. It was faster than the camera refresh rate. Armed with Taggart's description of the perfect silence and the instantaneous visual flattening, April returned to the White Room, realizing the gravity of Finch's achievement. He hadn't just created a localized anomaly, he had temporarily succeeded in making the universe acknowledge an algebraic mistake. The subtraction was truly absolute, and the energy required was immense, drawn likely from the latent fields of the obsidian tetrahedron she now held securely. Part 5. Reverse engineering the impossibility. To counter the FBI's theories that the void was caused by exotic weaponry, April needed peer confirmation that the structural integrity of the remaining room defied conventional explanation. She contacted Dr. Elena Kane, a disgraced but brilliant structural engineer known for her radical theories on high-stress material cohesion. Kane, initially hostile, became engrossed when April sent her the forensic images. "This is impossible, Woods," Kane stated over a secure line, her voice tight with fascination and horror. "Look at the cross-section where the ceiling meets the void. If a volume of material that size were removed by explosive force, there would be microfractures radiating meters away. If it was a conventional implosion, the remaining ceiling plate would have failed under the sudden, unbalanced shear stress. Yet, the material integrity holds perfectly right up to the boundary edge." Kane's analysis confirmed that the material hadn't been blasted or melted, it had been mathematically subtracted. The remaining structure behaved as if the 2 by 2 by 2 meter cube had never been there, proving Finch's theory that PVS required the surrounding space to instantaneously forget the existence of the removed volume. April then focused on the tetrahedron's connection to the stability. She overlaid the crystal's known angles, 54.74 degrees, onto the schematics of the void. The torsion field generator's theoretical output field required a perfect, non-symmetrical, focused point to initiate the localized warp. The tetrahedron served as the perfect crystalline lens, concentrating the energy needed to force the geometric inversion. Finch's notes showed he was trying to achieve a state he called zero stress displacement, removing the volume without imparting stress on the adjacent materials. He succeeded too well. April theorized that the tetrahedron, now cooling rapidly, had served its purpose, achieving the equilibrium. The void was self-sustaining, maintained by the inertia of the torsion field generator, TFG, still humming quietly in the secure sublevel. The man didn't just disappear, April concluded to Kane. He became a mathematical truth. If the structure holds perfectly, it means the absence is a physical state, not a momentary lack. Kane conceded. If the geometry is perfect, the containment is perfect. He is preserved, woods, perfectly preserved, in a geometric singularity that exists outside our three dimensions, defined only by its absence in our reality. The question is, how do you reintroduce a volume the universe has politely forgotten? Part 6. The architectural flaw. April tracked Finch's historical trajectory, finding clues not in physics journals, but in architectural philosophy. Before pivoting entirely to theoretical physics, Finch was a renowned, though eccentric, architect obsessed with perfection and the elimination of redundant space. His early manifests railed against the inefficiency of conventional structures, arguing that curves and unnecessary volume were aesthetic weaknesses. He designed buildings with impossible sightlines and gravity-defying cantilevers, often facing lawsuits for structures that were mathematically sound but structurally terrifying to inhabit. This obsession provided a crucial psychological key. Finch wasn't seeking discovery. He was seeking purity. His goal was to create the perfectly efficient, non-existent dwelling. The White Room wasn't just a lab, it was his ultimate aesthetic statement, designed to be erased. April located an archived corporate filing regarding a previous, highly classified incident at a defunct Finch subsidiary known as Spatial Dynamics. This incident involved a low-level test of a geometric compression field utilizing low-level biological material, a primate named Subject 7. The report, heavily redacted, detailed how Subject 7, exposed to a weak, uncontrolled torsion field, didn't die or vanish, but reportedly flickered for 48 hours, intermittently disappearing from view, causing severe psychological trauma to observers. When the effect finally subsided, Subject 7 was found severely catatonic, exhibiting total spatial disorientation, and had microscopically eroded skin where the geometric compression had attempted to neatly shear the edges of its volume. The conclusion: biological asymmetry caused the compression to be unstable, resulting in agonizing internal friction. Finch's ambition had escalated dramatically. He didn't just want to subtract space, he wanted to subtract himself into a state of perfection. April reread Vance's terrified quote. He had to be the final, perfect geometric component. Finch, knowing the instability of organic material, must have attempted to enter the field at the precise moment of maximum equilibrium, hoping the geometric perfection of the PVS would override the chaotic asymmetry of his own body. He wasn't trying to achieve immortality. He was attempting architectural self-optimization, believing his own complex form could be momentarily simplified to a single point of zero volume. Part 7. The final log entry. April focused her attention back on the obsidian tetrahedron, which she had managed to smuggle out of the facility by claiming it was necessary for her structural analysis. Using equipment supplied by Kane, April found a tiny, nearly invisible access port hidden beneath one of the crystalline carvings. The obsidian wasn't just a lens. It was a high-density, crystalline storage medium designed to record the final field interactions of the torsion field generator. After hours of specialized decryption, April recovered Finch's final audio log, recorded moments before the silent inhalation described by Taggart. The recording was calm, almost euphoric. Finch's voice, distant and echoing. Equilibrium achieved. Pressure readings nominal. The torsion signature is stabilizing perfectly at 1.0. I am preparing to demonstrate that three-dimensional volume is merely a choice, not a necessity. The PVS chamber is ready to accept the perfect non-volume. I step into the future of conservation. There was a brief pause, then a sharp intake of breath. The next section of the log was panicked, fragmented. Finch, strained, wait. Pressure spike. The feedback loop, it's not dissipating the energy, it's amplifying the containment field. The tetrahedron is locking the geometry. I miscalculated the internal coefficient of the compression field. It requires a secondary, asymmetrical input to release. I designed the trap perfectly. April, God, I designed the trap perfectly. The PVS isn't a temporary storage unit. It's a dimensional cage. I am not being stored. I am being consumed by my own definition of perfection. The log ended with a sound that wasn't Taggart's silent inhalation, but a high-pitched, agonizing harmonic, the sound of organic matter being compressed into zero volume, perfectly and instantly. April felt sick. Finch hadn't been erased. He was entombed inside a geometric perfect cube of his own making, his volume preserved but displaced from reality by a hyperstable subtraction field maintained by the TFG generator still running in the sublevel. If the void was the cage, the generator was the padlock. The only way to retrieve Finch, or whatever remained of him, was to neutralize the field, and that meant confronting the TFG directly. Part 8. Miriam's Confession and the Generator. April contacted Miriam Vance again, using the newly recovered audio log as leverage. Vance broke completely, confirming that the torsion field generator, TFG, was a prototype powered by an extremely dangerous exotic alloy, a metamaterial known only as stasis iron, designed to maintain energy potential indefinitely. The generator is the key, Vance sobbed. Dr. Finch knew this was the ultimate risk. He set the security parameters high enough that even if the PVS locked, nobody could dismantle the TFG without his specific biometric sequence. Vance admitted that she had assisted Finch in establishing the failsafe, but had grown terrified of his ambition. She confirmed the generator was housed in a hardened vault 3 levels below the White Room, protected by multiple blast doors and environmental locks. The void is silent and stable now, April, because the TFG is operating at peak efficiency. It's feeding the geometric equilibrium. If that generator stops, the geometry must return. It must, Vance insisted, but the terror in her eyes belied her conviction. April pressed Kane, the structural engineer, for an assessment of what would happen if the TFG was abruptly shut down. Kane's response was chilling. The missing volume must be reinserted into 3D space. It will be instantaneous, unmediated by any gradual transitional field. There are 2 possibilities, both catastrophic. 1. The structural integrity of the surrounding White Room fails under the instantaneous, chaotic reintroduction of shear volume, leading to a catastrophic implosion of the entire institute. 2. The missing volume, including Finch, is slammed back into the space at relativistic speeds, annihilating whatever is in its path, including the air, leaving a perfect, pressurized vacuum where the room used to be. April realized there was no safe way to retrieve the missing space. Finch had achieved perfect subtraction, and the reversal threatened to be just as absolute in its destruction. She understood the true horror of the journalistic imperative. She had to report the truth, but first, she had to stop the silent, perfect ticking clock maintained by the TFG, regardless of the consequences. Part 9. Breaching the Vault. April knew Hollis and the FBI would never approve an unauthorized breach of the TFG vault, fearing the catastrophic consequences Kane had outlined. She devised a plan, utilizing her knowledge of Finch's architectural paranoia and Vance's detailed schematics of the sublevel. She bypassed the biometric locks using a highly specialized frequency scrambler, a device designed by Kane to disrupt advanced electronic countermeasures, claiming the FBI needed it for structural assessment. Hollis, distracted by high-level briefing calls, never noticed. April descended into the sublevels. The TFG vault was cold, humid, and utterly silent. The reinforced doors were sealed tight. She used a directed sonic pulse to mimic the acoustic signature of Finch's biometric key, forcing a brief security window, and slipped inside. The torsion field generator was monumental, a complex array of crystalline manifolds and humming coils, bathed in a dim, eerie blue light. It pulsed with a silent, heavy rhythm, its energy output minimal but perfectly sustained. The heart of the generator was a core of the stasis iron alloy, glowing faintly, maintaining the geometry above. April had only seconds before the manual override alarm sounded. She approached the main console. Finch had designed the shutdown sequence to require a specific 7-digit sequence based on a highly complex mathematical constant he frequently used, the Finch constant, a derivative of the golden ratio applied to multidimensional folding. April had found the constant hidden in the decorative carvings on the obsidian tetrahedron. She began inputting the sequence, her fingers trembling slightly. The room felt heavy, the latent energy field pushing against her very physical presence, urging her own volume to compress. She knew that the instant the power ceased, the geometric prison upstairs would snap open. She was risking the structural integrity of the entire mountain complex and possibly the annihilation of Finch, but the alternative was a permanent, scientifically impossible void existing in the heart of a federally funded research institute. The penultimate digit clicked into place. April braced herself, knowing the moment of reversal was upon her. Part 10. The Restoration of Geometry. April entered the final digit. For a second, nothing happened. Then, the TFG array went completely dark, the eerie blue hum vanishing instantly. There was no explosion, no seismic event below ground. Instead, April felt a profound, instantaneous sense of relief, as if the surrounding reality had sighed and relaxed. She raced back up to the White Room, bypassing the immediate security lockdown alarms now blaring through the Institute. Hollis and a team of agents were already surrounding the void, weapons drawn, anticipating a chaotic implosion. But the implosion never came. As April reached the viewing platform, the space where the perfect cube had existed simply flickered, not violently, but with a silent, blinding snap of light, a geometric correction. The void was gone. The concrete floor, the titanium wall, and the perfect white ceiling were seamlessly restored. The geometry was no longer missing. The space was whole again. Hollis lowered his weapon, staring at the perfectly restored volume. "He's back," Hollis whispered, relief flooding his face. April, however, saw the forensic reality. There was no man. Scattered across the pristine, newly restored concrete floor, exactly where Finch had been standing, were not large fragments, but microscopic, perfectly uniform crystals. These crystals formed a complex, shattered lattice, arranged in what looked like an instantly frozen geometric pattern. They were colorless, smooth, and utterly inanimate. April knelt down, examining the fragments closely. They were perfectly preserved, infinitesimally small chips of what appeared to be organic material. Bone, tissue, threads of clothing. Kane's initial prediction had been right, but incomplete. When the torsion field locked, Finch's organic asymmetry had caused his volume to be compressed to zero, annihilating his complex structure into its most basic crystalline components. When the geometry was reinserted, the perfect volume returned, but the organic material inside, having been subjected to perfect mathematical compression, returned as flawless, crystalline dust. Dr. Alastair Finch had achieved the perfect volume subtraction and its perfect, annihilating reversal. He was no longer a man. He was a geometric correction. April filed her final report from the roadside diner, staring at the image of the crystalline lattice. The geometry was found, but the man was perfectly erased by the very principle he sought to prove. The article's headline wrote itself: "The geometry is found. The architect became dust." The mystery of the missing space was solved, but the dark consequence of absolute symmetry remained.